Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and got a great show for you tonight. Of course, going to start off this evening with another Coach's Corner. Got a great panel here. Might be one short, not sure yet. We're going to wait and see, but got two great guys in the wings here that are going to be joining me here in just a minute or two. And then a little bit later on in the show, as most of you have probably known from all of the postings on social media that I've done the last couple of days, that Byron Casper is going to be joining me here in about an hour's time, the son of legendary, of course, Billy Casper, who passed away a little earlier this year in February, as I recall. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to talk a little bit about his dad and talk a little bit about golf, of course, and talk about what the future holds for Casper Golf and a lot of other great stuff. So we want to make sure you stick around for that. But we're going to have Coach's Corner here, as I said, just in a second. And hopefully our third panelist will be joining us here shortly. But just to remind everybody, of course, this is a live broadcast every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. And the best way to find us, if you haven't already done so, or if you want to refer it to a friend on how to get in touch, you can go to blogtalkradio.com. Go up in the search key, type Golf Talk Live, and that will bring you to the main page, and you can just click on the live show that's there. Or if you happen to not be able to join us from 6 to 8 Central on Thursdays, you can scroll down through the on-demand section, and that has all of the previously aired shows in their ascending order from the earliest, the most recent on top, all the way down to the oldest. So if you don't get a chance to join us live, you can certainly go there after the show or at any time, and you can catch some of the highlights there. Also, if you want to speak to any of the guests or call in during the live broadcast, you're more than happy to. Number to call is area code 646-716-4667. Or if you have any questions or comments about the program, you can email me personally at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Or if you're somebody in the golf profession and you want to maybe share your thoughts with the listeners on the program, or maybe you want to join in on one of the Coach's Corner panels discussions, you're more than happy to do so. You can also email me there at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com, and we'll see what we can do about fitting into the program. Just a heads up, though, I'm now booking for July, so May and June are completely booked, and so I'm looking at July, so it might be a couple of months before I can fit you in, but be patient, and we'll do what we can. Also, as I mentioned, to update the program, I'm on social media, particularly Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, if you go to facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog, make sure you have blog on the end there. And while you're there, please like the page if you haven't already done so. I keep the show regularly updated there and through many of the different groups, as I'm sure my guests will attest to, the golf groups on Facebook. I post every week who my guests are going to be and the times and so forth of the show. Also on Twitter, as I mentioned, you can follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. CEO is in capital letters, of course. Thank you for all of the recent followers, and thank you for all of the retweets as well of the program and so forth. Appreciate that always. And you can go to the Golf Talk Live website at www.golftalkliveblog.com and keep everything pretty much updated there as well. As I mentioned, I got a great panel here tonight on the show. Two of them have joined me here, and as I said, I'm not sure about the third one. Maybe a little bit of a time issue. She's on the West Coast, so she may have gotten confused with the time, but we'll hopefully get her to dial in here shortly. But first up, of course, is Clint Wright. He's been on the show many, many times, both as a guest and several times on the panelist. I don't know, he must like me or something. I don't know what the deal is, but I'm glad to have him back. He's a 30-year member of the PGA. He's also a partner at TGM Golf and a big proponent of the R3 approach, him and his group there at TGM Golf. So we're going to talk to him at some point about that as well. The other joining here tonight is Matthew Cook. He's been on the program before. He joined us here not too long ago, actually, for a Coach's Corner panel, and liked it enough that he agreed to come back. And he's one of many golf coaches down at Bishop Gates Golf Academy, and I believe that's in Florida. We'll double-check that when he comes on. And rounding up the panel, and as I said, she's not here with us right this moment, but hopefully she'll be joining us here shortly, is Jamie Leno-Zimron. Maybe I can raise my voice a little bit and take her part. I don't know. She's a LPGA Class A teaching professional, as well as a speaker, a great instructor, a body worker. She's actually a martial artist, and as well as a consultant. But hopefully, Jamie, if you're listening to the program, get you to call in and join in on the panel. But in the meantime, guys, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Glad to be here, Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having us.
Not a problem. Well, I appreciate it, guys, and thanks thanks for calling in. And I know, as I've said many times, pardon me, I realize that everybody's evening is very to themselves, and sometimes it's not always easy for you guys to be able to join in. And I appreciate you giving your time for the listeners and sharing some great discussion with those tuning into the broadcast every week. So I appreciate you guys taking that time, and thanks again for doing that. Clint, excuse me for a second. Pardon me. I've been dealing with this bit of a cough here this last week or so forgive me if I interrupt once in a while. Clint, as I mentioned off air, I'm going to dedicate this show to you tonight, this Coach's Corner to you. I was kind of debating on what I wanted to have for a discussion, and certainly had a realm of questions coming in, but I wanted to do something a little bit different to keep it interesting. And Clint had sent me in an email some questions, so I decided to pick tonight's topic. So let it never be said that I don't give credit where credit is due. Clint submitted some questions, which I will reference as I go along. I'll let you know which ones he actually sent in. Plus, I added a few of my own to complete the discussion. So thank you, Clint. You've earned,
you're welcome.
As they say, you've earned a leg up from under the bus tonight. You're actually able to ride on the bus tonight.
On
so
the bumper,
without further,
right?
Yeah. Now you have to be at the back of the bus, but that's another story.
Okay.
But anyways, well, I don't want to interrupt the driver, so. Tonight's topic is we're gonna cover, guys, the difference really in teaching versus coaching, and I thought this was a great topic because, as we all know in the profession, we understand the differences, but there's a lot of people out there that may ask the question or may wonder what is the difference between a teacher or instructor and somebody that's a golf coach. Much like many of us are now, but there is certainly a difference, and we're going to talk about that. So, Clint, I'm going to give you the honors. With a question that you submitted, is there a difference between teaching and coaching a student? Clint, that was one of the questions that you submitted. What I'd like you to do first, as part of this, and then I want you maybe expand a little bit, and then Matthew, I'll get you to jump in as well. Just give a brief description, if you will, of what the actual difference, what is a golf instructor or teacher, and what is a golf coach?
Well, Ted, I think we, as people involved in instructing people how to learn how to play golf, whatever, we actually end up being both at some point. There's even, I coached college golf for a number of years as well, and, you generally bring in players that are pretty good ball strikers. You don't have to teach them a lot of things fundamentally. You just got to coach them on becoming better players. And the real big decision point, I think, from an instructor that's working with somebody is at what point in their evolution of a better golf swing do you stop teaching them and begin to coach them on how to use it better, how to lower their score? And I think that's a real difficult thing for us as instructors to do, because we all know that probably 90% of the people that come to us, in their mind, they just want to be able to hit it better. They want to be able to swing better. They want to be able to do something. And we have some major discussions amongst our group about when do you convince your student to accept what they do physically.
Right.
To where you then can go to coaching them, and they can use their time that they have allotted for improving their game to start moving away from the technical aspects of improving their swing to learning how to use their swing on the course. At what point do you do that? And it's a very difficult decision, because I had a young fellow I was working with just a couple of weeks ago. I'd been working with him about 6 months on and off. He comes to me, we look at his golf swing, and I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. If you want to make your golf swing better, I'm not going to help you, because it's as good as you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it's a tough thing. And he looked at me, what are you talking about? He said, look, your golf swing is good enough. You can go out and be a top-ranked college player. He's a senior in high school right now, and he's got a good opportunity. Your golf swing, and you strike the ball well enough, is that you're wasting your time trying to make that swing better, because you're most likely going to ruin it. You're
right.
going to do something here that's going to take away from that. Accept the fact that what you're doing is really good, and go out and let's learn how to use it. If you want to go out on the golf course and let's start playing some golf and analyzing how you get around the golf course, then I'm all with you. And I think that's a kind of a little bit of tough love for the kids particularly. Now, some of our older folks, maybe they want to dedicate a little more time to it. But the question I have, and wanted to ask everybody that was going to be here tonight, at what point do you do that? I think it's up to our instructors, and maybe it's up to understanding our student, and when are they willing to accept that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And just to clarify, Matthew, I'm going to let you jump in here, and before you answer that, because that's actually going to be the next question. I want you just to sort of explain. I'm Clinton, and I know you've done a good job here, but I just want Matthew to sort of define specifically what some of the differences are. I mean, obviously we want to have that transition, but as far as a golf instructor basically is going to teach the basics or the fundamentals of the swing, that sort of thing. And obviously a golf coach, as Clint has pointed out, is going to take it and help you take that, what you've learned. What are some of the differences that you see in what you're doing as opposed to just a basic, and I don't want to make light of an instructor or teacher, because obviously everybody plays an important role, but there is a definite difference. What do you see differently as to what you're doing as to what Clint was just talking about?
Well, you mean what do I see differently from teaching to coaching? How would I separate to how I define each one? That's exactly. What you're asking?
Yes.
Well, I like how Clint mentions that at some point we actually do both. There's lots of different views on it, and it's very interesting. It's quite a dynamic subject and topic, but I think to clearly define or to separate, so to speak, a teacher, in my opinion and in my view and from what I've learned in my past experiences, a teacher is someone who really focuses on something specifically, and a coach is more of, you hear golf coach or tennis coach, basketball coach. You don't coach basketball. You don't coach golf. You don't coach a sport. You coach people. 100% of each thing you're coaching is a person. So you end up coaching the person, and a coach is someone that really organizes and facilitates all the different things that a player needs, whereas a teacher really specifies more in one specific domain, in my view. Such as, for example, working with some of the students at the golf academy, when you are a golf coach to 6 to 8, 9 students, you do end up organizing and facilitating students' needs, whether it's to go to someone who teaches specifically swing, or someone who teaches specific physical exercises, or someone teaches something specifically. I think that's the defining thing between a golf coach and a teacher.
Yeah, and just to so that everybody sort of understands, I know you guys do, but I think that there's some out there that may not. Specifically, what we're talking about is a golf instructor or a teacher, as they may be referred to, is typically an individual that is trained to conduct golf lessons or group clinics certainly a coach can do that as well, but golf instructors mainly concern themselves with helping golfers establish sound fundamentals. And some people may differ in their opinions, but essentially they help us to understand the grip and the stance, the alignment, posture, and ball position, and certainly effective swing mechanics, and also help on short game skills. But really a coach is somebody who certainly has to be a golf instructor first. They need to understand the basics and certainly has to be trained as a golf instructor. But as you guys have pointed out, a golf coach is really somebody who is trained to develop not only the fundamentals and technical skills, but is also trained to teach and coach those aspiring golfers out there that want to sort of take their game. In other words, they've got to now take it from the range and help them understand how to put all of these tools that they've now learned on the range, or in some cases even on the course, and learn how to apply it to the game of golf and to be able to shoot those great scores that they want to shoot. And that's really, I think, the difference between the two. Now, Clint, to go to your question here, when is it? Is it up to the student? Is it up to the coach, or is it a combination? When is it time for us as instructors to say, okay, you know what, you've learned enough on this aspect here, it's time for the coaching aspect to sort to take root? When do you decide, or who decides when that step is taken?
I think it's a combination of the teacher and the student together. But let me add one thing to what Matthew, I think is really interesting in what he said, is that, and this is why one of those questions asked, because this kind of clears things up for me some, is a teacher actually teaches golf, teaches the game, and a coach coaches players. There's a big difference. You don't coach basketball, you coach the player, but you teach basketball or you teach golf, and you coach the person, which is cool. I like that. You know, I think that as instructors, we have to have the courage to tell our student, we need to move on to something that's going to make your score better or make your game better. You know, and you have to prove it to them. You know, what I do is I use the iPad and the coach's eye, the video, whatever all the technology to prove to my student, you got a pretty good golf swing. I mean, this looks good. Let's compare it to people that you would think would be credible as far as having good golf swings, and you have to prove it to them. You know, that at some point you've got to, as an instructor, I think we have to recognize in how we can direct our student to use their time to the best of their game. You know, and to me, if a player's getting the ball airborne, kind of hitting it down range pretty well, I mean, these are just very individual decisions you have to make, then that's when you have to move them on. And not to bring the R3 in here, but that's really the core of the R3 approach to learning how to play. Mm-hmm. And Ted, we get together, I'd like to have, to be able to talk about the R3 approach some, but the point being is that we see it as a bridge, that you got to bridge away from the technical and get over to the playing. And we call it blending. How do you blend? How do you convince your student you need to start blending technique with playing skills? And the first thing I do is try to explain to them the difference. You know, playing skills is knowing what club to hit from what area. What's your imagination? What kind of shot you're going to play here? Right. Those are playing skills. Being able to get over the ball and take a deep breath, not hold your breath while you're nervous and hitting it. Those are playing skills. Has nothing to do with technique. Right. And I would say more than half, if not very much, almost 100% of the players that I deal with, they do not recognize that until you sit them down and explain that, hey, you need to accept your golf swing is pretty good. I'm going to prove it to you that it is. So now let's dedicate our time to this playing skill aspect for a little bit. And almost invariably they see their score come down. Because they're focused in on what they need to at that point. Yeah, and the other thing too is I think that a lot of people, especially the amateurs out there, obviously when you start dealing with the better players, they've kind of and certainly not all of them, because I've seen a few that still sometimes you have to explain things to, but for the most part they get it at that point. Once you start getting into your low handicap scores, a lot of the players that have been playing for a little while, they understand the differences in that. But some of your high handicap players, you can tell by what questions they ask you when they come to you,
It's always, can you fix this? Can you fix that? And they don't want to really get to the root of the problem. It's not just a simple fix. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times, more often, it's not. And they have to decide really, and this is going to play into this next question. And Matthew, I'm going to let you handle this one to start with, and then Clint, by all means, jump in.
Sure.
How does a player decide if he or she needs a golf instructor or a golf coach? And let me just read this first. Which of the options is really, of those two, whether instructor or coach, really depends on the individual's goals and desires. Either is certainly an effective way to learn to play the game of golf well and have fun doing so, but competing at a high level certainly requires a team with a central goal in mind. If it's a team that, a golf school or college or something to that degree. But it really depends on the individual. So with that in mind, Matthew, how does a player decide what they really need?
How does a player decide whether they need a golf coach or a instructor?
Yes.
Well, I think what you said is correct. It all depends on the player. I mean, if the player has a different vision and different desires, different goals, it really determines what whoever they're going to see. It really determines what they can do with them.
Well, let me interrupt you. Let me rephrase this a little bit. We have to go into the assumption, and I know this is not probably a very popular assumption, but a lot of times, and if we're going to be honest, let's be honest. There's a lot of people that come to us as instructors, coaches, whatever title you want to carry, or a little of both, that really don't know what they want. So is it up to us?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Is it up to us then to really, find out from them what it is that they want to do? Should we be asking these questions first, as opposed to Johnny coming up and saying, "Okay, Ted or Clint or Matthew, I got a bad slice or I'm hooking the ball. Can you fix it?" Do we need to? Is it up to us to sort of initiate that dialogue and find out what it is they really want?
Yes.
Pertaining to golf. Okay, so go from there.
100%. I think it is. It's up to us to ask that question. It's our duty as a golf coach not to put somebody through something that maybe subconsciously doesn't want to do. Because we know as golf coaches and golf instructors, golf teachers, whatever you want to call yourself, we know enough about what it kind of takes to reach a level of expertise in golf. And we know it's difficult, we know it's hard. So, yeah, it's completely our job, our responsibility to ask that question. I mean, the perfect example is, one of the most recent articles on McCormack and Jordan Spieth. The first time Spieth ever went to McCormack, he went in his office and they sat down and they had a chat. And Spieth was just this young boy who didn't really, he was this young guy, played golf, enjoyed it. And they sat down and they chatted, they had a talk, they discussed goals and what his vision was. And maybe at that time, who knows, maybe he knew what he wanted, maybe he didn't.
Sure.
But I think it's definitely up to us to at least pose them questions, because if we don't do it, then, a kid gets to 18, 19 years old, and if they still don't know what they're doing, they're going to struggle in the real world. We can use golf as that tool to help people in life. So I think 100% it's up to us to ask that question. I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, and go ahead, Clint.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say is that I think that the player, a beginning player or a more of an advanced player, they really probably have a pretty good idea of what they want to do. They want to have a better golf game, maybe a lower score. The problem of it is they don't know how to get there.
Right.
They don't know the path to take. And one of the things, I see myself, I have a new student call me, set up a first appointment. I'm not a teacher, nor am I a coach at that point. I'm an evaluator.
Right.
All right? Hit me some balls. I want to evaluate where you're at. Then we can have a conversation about whether you need a teacher or whether you need me to be the coach.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I need to be able to do is like Matthew said, we have to be brutally honest with our student to evaluate where they're at. Okay, you're rolling it on the ground every time. I need to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I could coach you all day long, and it ain't going to get any better. I need to be a teacher. And, the point that then we make that decision for the student. We may not tell them, hey, we're going to be a teacher now instead of a coach. We don't need to say that. But we're going to set a roadmap or a path that we think that this student needs to take and explain that path to them. Here's where we're at. We use I keep coming back to the R3, but we use an R3 learning puzzle to show them, hey, here's where we're going. Here's the path we're taking. And we honestly believe you got to know where you want to go before you can go there. So what do you want your golf game to look like? That question. What do you want it to look like? You want to shoot par? You want to break 90? What do you want it to look like? And then we can help them find the path to that thing they want.
Exactly. And Clint, you raise a very interesting point, because a lot of players, and I say players because they're people that want to play this game, but a lot of them really don't know truthfully what they want. And the danger of that is, as a golf coach or instructor, too often, and this is certainly not across the board, but there are those out there that sort of impose their will or their understanding or thought process, if you will, on those students. And to give you an example, somebody that maybe just wants to be a recreational golfer, just wants to be able to hit a decent ball and play, has a decent, ball striking ability now, but maybe has a few areas that need to be fine-tuned, doesn't want to reinvent the wheel. A lot of times, if we're not number one thing as golf professionals, we have to listen and really listen and understand what it is that's being transmitted from that individual. Because a lot of times, I think what happens, and this is in all walks of life, it's not just in golf. Individuals, a lot of times, the instructors will hear one thing. It may not be necessarily what the student wants. So next thing you know, we're putting them in this program that's, again, reinventing the wheel. And the student just gets frustrated, because now what's happening is they've taken a pretty decent golf game and they've sort of dissected it, and ultimately down the road it may end up being improved, but it frustrates that student along the way. So here's one of the things that I want to ask you guys. Matthew, I'll let you start, just since Clint started with the other. Can we overteach students, and if so, how?
Can we overteach? Yeah, we can.
Okay.
I think it happens. I think it happens quite often. I know that's opinionated, but I think it happens all too often. And the game of golf, as we lost 400,000 people last year, I think the stats also tell us that too. Again, that's just my opinion based off some facts, but
and you're right.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we tend to overteach sometimes, and I've done it as well. I've been one of the guys that's learned something new, and then all of a sudden I want to go and teach it. So I end up throwing all these silly long words to people that really don't make sense to them, just make sense to me. I think, we can overteach. And
do we get in our own way sometimes? Do you think as instructors and teachers and coaches that we get in our own way sometimes, especially when we're working with new students, because of exactly what you just said? You've been down to the PGA show maybe, or you've been to a clinic or something, and you've seen some great technology, or you've seen some great techniques, and you're thinking, wow, this is pretty exciting. You're kind of jazzed up about it. Now suddenly you go back to your group of students and say, hey, guess what I'm working on right now, and I think this is fantastic. Maybe 50% of them might be interested in it, but the other 50% may not. So now we start teaching that process to students that maybe don't really want it. And Clint, you talked about something. I want to get you to jump in here as well. You mentioned something early on about a student of yours who really you couldn't teach them anymore. They were at the point now they needed to move forward. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, here's Matthew said it. There's no doubt, and I guess that is the kind of the core of what I was talking about earlier. There is no doubt that we have all over-taught students. The question is from our standpoint, instructors, when do I need to become the coach and stop teaching? And we definitely have overcoached. But part of that overcoaching comes from the student because they think that's what they want. Let's go hit some balls on the range. I need to work on my weight shift or my transfer or am I coming up off the ball? I mean, that's what we want. Our students, that's what they think that they want to do. And to be honest with you, we're kind of all a little long in the tooth here teaching, so we may have the courage to tell that student. But if I'm a young instructor that's just kind of getting started or maybe been doing it for a few years, I may not have the courage to look my student in the eye and say, hey, we really don't need to do this today.
Yeah.
We need to go over here and let me coach a little bit. And you made a point just a minute ago about we break it down into basically three types of players: social, recreational, competitive, and competitive tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And we explain to our students, is this the type of person you want to be? Social, recreational? Do you keep score?
Yeah.
Heck, we got students they don't keep score. They don't care. They're not going to play competitive golf. They want to just hit some good shots, go out and enjoy their day, and certainly they keep score, but we don't encourage them to. We don't use the score as a benchmark or measuring whether they're improving or not. I start out my beginners with double par. If you hit it more than 8 times on a par 4, pick it up.
Yeah.
Walk it up on the edge of the green and putt out. And then once you can get to the green in less than double par, we are improving.
Mm-hmm.
We're improving. Then, those are the type of things that we try to use as benchmarks to where they can continue to play and not be so frustrated. But the student needs to know where they want to be. Obviously we get a high school kid or a college player. He wants to be a competitive tournament player. All right, well, here's what it takes to be that. Here's what you got to do. What's your commitment level to being that type of player? And, that was the type of kid I was talking about earlier. He's a competitive tournament player. Now, if I'm going to make him the best competitive tournament player he can be, which that's what he wants, then I have to have the guts to tell him, I'm not going to stand out here on this driving range with you any longer right now, because your technical golf swing is good as it can be at this point. Okay? He's 18 years old. He's going to get bigger and stronger.
Sure.
But right now, it all changes. So we go back and forth between teaching and coaching, but we have to tell players, if you want to be the best competitive player you can right now, we are wasting our time on this tee box. Let's go work on, tell me how you're going to play this hole. What's your strategy? How are you going to work your way around the golf course today? What's your plan? Those are playing skills. Knowing when, these kids, they amaze me. Matthew, have you ever played a par 5 that you had to hit it 3 times to get there? We all have, right?
Yeah.
These kids don't.
Yeah.
They don't even give it a second thought. If they can't hit that green in 2, they're going to go at it no matter what.
Yeah.
You and I with some playing experience, we're going, that's a pretty tight green up there. I still have wedges in my bag that work.
Right.
So maybe I ought to lay this thing up and wedge it in there and make a putt. These kids, they don't think that.
Well,
they're going, they're blowing it in there every time, and they don't give that strategy much consideration. Instead of
I don't think many do, to be honest.
Pardon me?
I don't think many do.
Yeah.
No, especially at that age. But that's typical. Yeah. When you get the mid-teens, we'll say 15, 16-year-olds up to even probably early 20s. That generation and that age group, and I remember, as we all do, at that age, you have a different mindset. It's like when you're driving a car. The gas pedal's on the right. The brake, is there a brake? You don't even think about the brake. It's just go, go, go. Once you have a little bit of driving experience and you get out on the road a little bit more, or maybe you've had your first little fender bender, you start to realize, hey, there's other people on the road. It's not just me. And, weaving in and out of traffic may not necessarily be the best, course of action here on this big interstate. So and the same thing applies with golf. And to Clint's point, if there's a par 5, if I come up to a par 5 and I know for a fact I'm going to get there in 2, then sure, I'm going to go for it. But if I'm a little unclear, or as Clint pointed out, maybe it's a very shallow green, or it's a small green, or maybe even it's not a very forgiving green, then I'm going to think about dialing it back a little bit, putting myself in position so I know I'm going to get there with my scoring clubs, which is going to be my wedges. And a lot of young guys out there, and even I think the girls are a little bit different, but the young guys particularly, they just don't think that way. It's almost like, and I hate to use him as an example, but it's almost like the John Daly mentality of grip it and rip it. That's all they think about. And
well,
they
over
just
time, I think
right?
golf traditionally has just perpetuated that belief to everybody. Everyone's heard of grip it and rip it, and everyone's heard of drive for show and putt for dough. I think it's just from tradition. So everyone, the golfers that are in the industry have been educated from the start, which is where it all starts with the education. They've been educated on only one thing and missing other parts of the puzzle, such as like you just spoke about strategy. The planning of a shot and the reflecting of shots is far greater than the action of hitting the ball, which is the swing. There are a lot of people miss that part out. And I like how you mentioned driving a car, because ultimately you learn to drive a car by getting in the car and doing it. You can read the books, you can listen to somebody, you can watch somebody, but you only actually learn to do it when you're actually in the seat and you're pushing the gas pedal going, whoa. That's when you learn to do it. So you only learn to play golf when you're out there on the golf course and you're learning the strategies and stuff like that.
Part of the learning of the strategies, though, too, now technology has outrun some of our courses, particularly up here. These kids don't play 580-yard par fives.
Right.
They're playing 525s, and they can reach them all in two. So when they do get in those situations, they don't think a second thought about trying to hit it at a par 5 and 2, because that's what they normally do. That's what they have learned, just like this driving example. They've learned to weave in and out of traffic, so, man, that's just what they know to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so true. So, Clint, your second question that you sent to me, it's certainly along the lines of what we were talking about, that transition. When do you start working on the scoring aspect versus swing improvements? And I know you've already kind of touched on that a little bit, but obviously we need to focus on the scoring aspect, because that's what's going to make them, especially your competitive golfers.
Right. Well, Ted, you know me, I'm going to spend probably, of the lesson times that I work with, I spend 90% of my time with a person around the green within 100 yards. That's partly my responsibility for our programs. But I actually will, with a new student, we spend a little bit of time. I work with their putting day one. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're rolling on the ground with a drive, we're going to hit a few drives, but we're going to work on putting day one as well. We're going to learn to chip and putt from the very beginning, because not to be too simplistic about it, but if you look in the rule book, the rule number one is the game.
Yeah.
And in Noah, and kind of paraphrasing here, you hit a ball in succession of strokes until it's what? Till it's hole. So if you can't put the ball in the hole, who cares how many times you hit it to get there?
Or how far?
Or how far? Okay, so I teach them, let's put the ball in the hole too. We'll get you up there too. But I work with them, that's very simple. I work with them from day one on their chipping and putting, because I want them to be successful. You can get somebody reasonably successful quite quickly in chipping and putting. Mm-hmm. Okay? So they can have something they're successful with. And that maybe helps them play longer. But to answer your question just real shortly, I work with, from the very beginning, we work putting, chipping, and long game. We chip and putt every lesson. If I'm working with somebody on their full game or advancement game, we always take time to chip and putt. Let's take a look at your putt stroke, see how it's doing. Always. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree. And I always say to a lot, I work a lot with different corporate types and that, and they always, especially some of the ones that get a little bit older, they want to hit it further and that. And I always say to them this, when you're on the range having a little bit of fun, maybe you're with a buddy or something, and you want to see who can drive it the furthest or whatnot, I said, that's the time to do it. But I said, when you get out on the golf course, it's not about how far you can hit it. It's about where you're positioning the balls along the course. It's about strategy. It doesn't matter whether you hit it 250 yards or 300 yards. If it's not straight or it's not putting it in the proper position that you need to be for any specific hole, then it doesn't matter how far you can hit it. And I think a lot of times, they're still thinking in that mentality of their range game, as I put it, is they're thinking about, well, I hit it great on the range and I hit it fantastic on the range, but then it stunk when I got out in the golf course. That's because they're trying to kill it.
Yeah.
They're trying to, complicate the process.
Yeah. I'll give you a little example of what I always ask. Once we get a player that maybe mid-range that we can coach and teach, a little bit more coaching than teaching, I always ask, I want you to tell me from a strategy standpoint, what is your 2 most favorite clubs in your bag? Irons. 9-iron, 6-iron. What's your favorite club? Then I want you to get to that spot as many times a day as you can.
Yep.
Okay? I don't care if you got to lay back with a 3-wood or whatever. If your 9-iron is your favorite club or your 8-iron is your favorite club, I want you to get to that shot as many times a day as you can. And it's amazing how they hit better shots because what are they using? Their favorite club.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen a kid, man, I'm really good from 75 yards away with my medium wedge. That's my favorite shot, my great distance. And that's my just really stock 54-degree shot, and that's the one I want to play as many times as I can today. So why drive the ball 50 yards from the green or hit your second shot on a par 5 50 yards from the green?
Yeah.
Get it in there at 75. That's the type of strategies that we try to work with that a lot of the players, they don't understand. But I always go, what's your favorite club? That's the one I want you to get to as many times as you can today. And that makes sense to them.
Yeah, and that's well
Play
said.
to your strengths and work on your weaknesses.
Pardon me?
Play to your strengths. Basically.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And play to your strengths.
Yeah, just another way of saying the same thing.
Yeah. Matthew, what do you do in respect to in your facility that you do with students that you're working through to try and get across in the importance of scoring and less on swing improvements? What do you do at your facility?
Well, first, it's the education. You hear a lot about technique, and you hear, we get a lot of students that come in and they talk about is technique, and that's all they want to do is go and work on the technique. But very few of them actually understand the definition of the word. Technique is defined as an efficient way of doing something. If we're going to learn golf technique, then an efficient way of playing golf, just like we spoke about, is getting the golf ball in the hole. And golf's a motor skill, so no matter what you do, it's ultimately learned the same way. All motor skills are the same psychological processes. So for us, it's education on, okay, your swing needs to be somewhere where you're not going to break your back or you're not going to snap your legs or something like that. So you've got to prevent injury and you've got to somehow transfer some energy. But, the main thing we try and do at the academy is to help these kids improve. So it's like you've been talking about the scoring aspects. So we try to teach these kids how to play. So we put them in game-like situations every day in practice. We put them in, we recreate situations. We simulate experiences. We allow students to chunk the right information in practice, which will allow them to retain and transfer that onto the golf course, because that's ultimately what it's about. And we just try to educate them firstly on that.
Well said. Very well said. All right, guys, I'm going to move on. I want sort of a little different question here. And Matthew, I'm going to let you, even though I know you just finished, I'm going to let you start on this. And then, Clint, I would like you to jump in as well. How do you make changes to your swing without affecting your scoring ability? So let me give you an example. Let's imagine that the player that we're talking about has a tournament that maybe it's a player that plays a lot of different competitive golf, and their season starts in March, let's say. What's the best time to work on swing changes in preparation to the season? So let's say in the middle of March, should they sort of cease working on technical changes? How long out from the tournament, and how close to the tournament, if need be, can they make any sort of swing changes for the beginning of their season? Matthew, I'll let you go first.
So when should a player really stop working on swing changes? Yeah.
Well, now we're talking about tournament. I'm not necessarily, doesn't have to be PGA or something, but even college golf. They're starting their season, let's say in March. they're getting prepared, but there may be some things we don't want to certainly affect. They maybe score very well. We don't want to affect their scoring, but there's some swing changes. Is it a good idea? And if so, when should we be looking at making those changes? How close to the deadline is it okay?
Well, I think, this has been quite repetitive, this comment, but it depends on the person and how much effort and work they put in. I've worked with students before that, they don't put much effort and energy and focus into practice, so I wouldn't change anything if they were playing that week or 2 weeks later. I'd try not to really change too much because it just causes a whole lot of other problems. But if it's somebody that does work hard and they do need to make a change, then a couple of weeks, at least 2-3 weeks, because it takes hundreds, thousands of repetitions to change a pattern of movement, and it takes hundreds of different ways to be able to retain that movement and transfer it to the golf course, and then you have to go through the process of the player starting to feel confident and comfortable with what the change is. It might be a minor change, it might be a big change, but the player has to then go through that cycle of feeling comfortable with it in order for them to have confidence and go on the golf course with it. But I think it's very difficult to determine a specific time frame depending on the person.
Yeah, and that's true. Clint, what about you? If you've got a student that's come to you, I'm sure you've had many who may be playing some college or even high school. Their seasons, we'll forget that we're in April. We'll say we're earlier in the season.
Right.
There's definitely some changes that maybe need to be. Is it something that you work on? When do you start working on that, or do you sort of let them play a few games first and then worry about it afterwards? Where do you start?
I think Matthew said it pretty well. I mean, it just really does depend on the individual and how they react to change and their emotional state and how well they adapt to things of that nature to be able to trust it on the golf course when they're playing. But I know when I was, coaching, is that generally once I made a decision on the 5 players that were going to go, I would have an individual session with them about 2 weeks in advance of an event, and we would evaluate where they were at. Okay, if they felt comfortable and they're striking the ball well, then we just made some notes about, okay, here's what we're thinking, here's the process we're going through of playing right now, and I would just simply begin to remind them of that the closer we got to the tournament day, and even when we were warming up the first day of the event, I would remind them, okay, here's what we're doing, right? You're still on track. Yep, coach, got it. Okay. Now, if you got a kid that's not striking the ball well a couple of weeks out, you're going to have to evaluate where it's at. Can we tweak it? Can't we just go back to something maybe we were doing a month earlier? I'm real bad about making notes about students and keeping those videos for a long time, particularly the videos of when they were striking the ball well.
Right.
So where we can pick up those differences. Okay, here's the difference. Now let's tweak this back in. It's not something you got to learn new. You're familiar with it. We just got to get re-familiar with it in your golf swing. So if it's a thing where they've just kind of gotten off track and we can get them back, I think you can work on that relatively close to your event. But if it's something that they're genuinely having a change about their golf game, I would think probably several months ahead with if it's something fundamentally you're wanting to change, So I think Matthew said it well. I think that from my perspective, if you're coaching a player and they're comfortable, it's just a matter of reminding and keeping them on track with more not physical things, but more emotional and mental thought processes to where they can continue to trust what they're doing well when they get out playing.
Yeah, well said. Clint, we got time for a final question here. I'll let you start this time, and then Matthew, please jump in as well. What are some effective ways that we can help students focus on more on the scoring aspect than the other part? What are some things that we can specifically do as instructors to keep them focused on scoring?
Well, I think that comes back to the real core question we've been talking about all evening, okay, is that me as an instructor, I have to convince my student that they have the luxury now of focusing on their short game. It's a luxury. In their mind, they're going, well, I got to hit it better. I got to hit it straighter. I got to hit it further. I got to hit it higher, hit it lower. So it's almost they see it as a luxury to go over and work on their short game. So we as instructors have to be able to prove to them, either through video or records we keep. I'm bad about, okay, you hit 50 balls a day in our lesson. You hit 45 of them pretty good. So we have the luxury now going over and spending more time today on chipping and putting than what we have in the past. We almost have to be a salesman.
Yeah.
At this point, I got to sell my student on the fact that they have the luxury now, because they're striking the ball pretty good, to less focus in on that playing skill versus hitting skill. So we have to be a salesman. I mean, and that's where we become evaluators again. We have to evaluate, okay, we're pretty good now. Now I need to sell my student on the fact that they can go work on their short game. So, I mean, it's just a sales job as far as I'm concerned. But there's been a lot of hard work done ahead of that sales job. It's almost like they need to reward themselves, Hey, you've done a lot of good work here, so let's reward ourselves by being able to do something different. Let's go over and chip a little more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot really, as I alluded to earlier in the program, I think it comes back to us in the profession that we have to really be the ones to take the initiative. And, certainly ultimately it's the student's decision what they want. But at the same time, we have to advise them not based on our own personal feelings or things like that. We have to advise them based on what it is that they want to accomplish. What's their ultimate goal? As you guys talked about earlier, maybe Clint, you said that if somebody just wants to go out there and have a good time, and that they don't need to keep score. Just go out and have fun, enjoy the game, enjoy the camaraderie. If somebody wants to be a little more serious, whether they're playing a lot of corporate events, maybe they're playing on a school team, or have aspirations of being the next Jordan Spieth, then that's a different approach that we're going to take. But I think a lot of times it goes back to what I said earlier on, and Matthew, I'm going to give you a second here to jump in as well. It goes back to us listening. We have to listen as coaches, instructors, teachers, to what it is our students want. And if they're unsure or confused about what they want, then that's when we can sort of step in and help them sort of decipher through the mumble jumble, if you will. Then it's okay to be a little bit more forceful. But we have to listen first to what they really want and make sure that we adapt our program, if you will, according to what they want and not what we want to show them this week because we learned last week down at such and such clinic or have 5,000 different certifications after our name. And I'm not trying to knock anybody in going out and updating their stuff. I think that's great, but that's for us. That's for us to know, to learn, to use as tools. Matthew, final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head with it's down to us to decide to find out what the player wants. But I mean, if we are working with a player that does want big things, and the question was, how do we keep golfers focused on score and scoring, or how to keep a golfer focused on scoring? That was the question, yeah?
Yes.
It's down for us as coaches, like you said. We create that in practice. We create that culture. Like we use the game-like training program, and I'd be quite happy to send this to anybody that's interested in looking at it because feedback's always a great thing from other professionals. Mm-hmm. But let's say for example a student, they needed to make a change with their putting, whether it's the stroke or alignment, posture, whatever you want to change. But then it's for us after making that change. So then let's put them in a culture, in an environment that is competitive, that does almost shape the path to these people, these students that are older people, these golfers. Let's shape the path for them to reach for a better score. It's for us to put up scoreboards, create games, create challenges, to create this culture of trying to get better and trying to improve a score. It's for us to create that. And that, the byproduct of that is that these golfers are focused on the score. They prioritize learning the skill over learning the action or learning the swing. And you can use any means. We use sort of things like Edify, Birdify. We have scoreboards out on the practice tee or on the golf course. We have all sorts of ways, all sorts of things just to become innovative and create this culture of trying to improve, either whether it's overall score or whether it's individual scores such as points in a putting game. I think that's how you would keep a golfer focused on the scoring aspect rather than the swinging aspect.
Gentlemen, very well said tonight. Some great discussion, and hopefully we've helped a few players out there understand the difference, but hopefully a few instructors out there rethink how they approach the game. Very good discussion. Thank you, Clint, for putting that bug in my ear.
Wonderful.
That was good, and you've earned, at least for the interim, a permanent spot on the bus. I'm taking you out from underneath.
I appreciate that.
And glad to. And I'm going to give you guys just a quick second here, and then I've got to move on and have Byron's going to be joining me here in a moment. But
sure.
I'm going to have you on, Clint, and any of your fellow competitor coaches and instructors that want to come on. I would like to do a show and talk a little bit about the R3 approach, but I'm going to give you just a quick second or two if you want to let everybody know how to get a hold of you and that sort of thing. And Matthew, same with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ted. I always enjoy the shows, and Matthew, it's great to be on with you as well. The easiest way to get a hold of us is through our Facebook page. Is the TGM Golf, the R3 approach. If you send us a message, we'd be more than happy to respond back to you. Again, it's TGM Golf, the R3 approach Facebook page. Is the easiest way to get a hold of us now. And we'd be more than happy to share some information, send us some videos. I mean, technology is wonderful, so we can reach you pretty much anywhere you're at. Just send us a message, and we'll be more than happy to do it. And, Ted, like I said, we will get together on the R3 approach. I think it's great to talk about it. But, again, thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Clint. Thank you. Matthew?
Well, yeah, thanks a lot, Ted. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. It's always a pleasure, and it was great speaking with you, Ken.
Yeah, great.
You can catch me on Facebook, Bishopsgate. You can email me, matthewc@bgga.com. I'm always willing and happy to give away anything that I've ever any other professionals. But I'm also on Twitter, Google+. You can find me pretty much on any social media platform out there.
Yeah. Not all at the same time, but yeah, you can find us around. That's so true. It's amazing with social media. Guys, thank you very much. And Matthew, also, I know that you had reached out to me recently as well through an email about one of your associates wanting to come on the program. And I think I'd like to have you and maybe some of the others there at your organization come on and have some good discussion as well. So I'll get out.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant.
I'll get in touch with you here in the next little bit, and we'll try and set that up as well. And Clint, I promise we'll get you on here again. But,
not a problem. We'll work it out. No problem.
Sounds good. And guys, as always, thank you very much, and look forward to having you guys back on again on the panel here in the future. And sorry, Jamie, I'm sorry you weren't able to make it tonight, but I'm sure you had a good reason. But you're always welcome back here, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next time. But guys, thank you very much. Have a great evening, and have a great weekend.
Good night, Ted.
You too, guys. Bye. Thanks a lot.
All right. All right, that was my guest panelists tonight, Clint Wright and Matthew Cook. A couple of great guys, really very good professionals. We talked a little bit about tonight about the differences between instructors and coaching, and some interesting discussion. So for those of you in the business that listened in, hopefully you learned something. And for those of you that out there want to improve your game and play, hopefully you have a better understanding of really what the teacher is there for, or instructor is there for, and what the coaches are there for. And if you're unsure, talk to your professional and have a discussion with them. I think you'll find that sometimes if you sit down and talk things out and exchange information, you'll have a better understanding and a better game plan that you can get to improving your game. But I've got a great guest tonight. Very looking forward to having this gentleman on here. We've talked a few times on the phone and emailed a number of times back. And, of course, I know you all know who he is, but let me just introduce Byron Casper here just a little bit, tell you a little bit about him, and then I'll bring him on the show. Byron Casper, of course, is the son of legendary Billy Casper. Byron has been around golf all of his life and certainly recognizes his love of the game started very early on when he was going to his father's golf camps in the summer and traveling to different events, watching his famous father, Billy Casper, compete. Byron began his own career in golf world as a teenager and was a caddy on the SPGA, which is now the Champions Tour, and PGA Tours, and worked for both his father and other tour professionals during that time. Byron also attended the Golf Academy of America in San Diego and Southwestern College, and then went to work for Carbite Golf as the senior PGA Tour representative for a year, and then he moved onto a position as the player liaison for the International Golf Tour and the International PGA. He moved to Scotland for a few years back in the 90s and was the head club fitter and teaching professional for Heritage Golf of St. Andrews, and then the St. Andrews Golf Company, both manufacturers of golf equipment. In 2007, Byron came back to the U.S. and was the first golf professional with Golf Tech in Utah. During that time, he became a certified coach and master club fitter for all of the major brands, and he is currently a TaylorMade staff member. He's written and published 2 books, including Billy Casper's Golf Tips, of course, Billy being his father, and is actively involved in children's charities, including the Billy Casper Youth Foundation. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. And certainly having the opportunity to grow up around the best in the game, Byron was able to learn many secrets and techniques that hopefully we'll learn a few tonight as we go along, that have helped him become an accomplished instructor and player. And his philosophy is very much in line with his father's. He believes in helping golfers understand their own swings and how he can help to make them the best golfers they can be with the minimum amount of changes. All kinds of great achievements. We'll talk more about that, but let me bring on my special guest tonight, Mr. Byron Casper. Good evening, Byron. Welcome to the show. I think we might have missed. Hang on one second. Good evening, Byron. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Ted.
How are you doing? I picked up the wrong line. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem at all. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I certainly enjoy listening to you when I can get online. So,
well, I appreciate that. Byron, I know we got lots to talk about. I've already done an introductory of you here, so everybody, of course, knows who you are anyways. But let's talk about first. We're going to talk about your dad, of course, and then talk about your involvement in golf and both your past and some of your current things that you're working on and doing, and then also what's up for the future. And we're going to talk about, of course, the tournament that's coming up next week that your father had run for many years, your family, and how it's going to help Billy's Kids, which was a charity that was very dear to his, and of course your mother's, Shirley. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But let's talk a little bit about Billy's, your father, of course, his history. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. Dad is, the only thing that makes him a better as far as being a golfer was the father that he was. Especially in the later years when I moved back from Scotland, I had the opportunity to work alongside him with the golf academies. I also had the opportunity to have him work as my coach. It's one of those things. It doesn't matter who your parents are. I think you take them for granted when you're young. And I'm just fortunate that I had that last 10 years to really get closer to him than I'd ever been in my life.
Yeah, and just for those obviously that aren't aware, we lost Billy earlier this year, February 7th, as I recall. He passed away in Springville, Utah, and I know that he has enjoyed this game for many, many years, and just an unbelievable player. And I had the pleasure of actually interviewing him, as we talked about on the phone the very first time you and I spoke on the phone. I got to interview your father just almost 2 years ago now, and I can't express not only the joy that he brought doing this program, but just being able to listen to what I would perceive as probably one of the most humble men I've ever had the pleasure of talking with. And, he loved the game of golf. He gave so much of himself to the game, but more importantly, he used it as a tool, not only as a career, but also to be able to give back to other people. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight as we discuss about the tournament in a moment. But let's talk about.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up actually really well right there. I think about Dad. It seemed like everything that my father did, even when he was busy traveling the tour and winning tournaments, he was always giving back. He was always speaking in public. He was always doing little things that maybe your average golf pro doesn't do, and he seemed to be able to balance it all, which, quite frankly, as a golf pro myself, I find remarkable.
Yeah, and that's so true. The interesting thing that I really found out about talk. I mean, obviously you can read all you want and you can see all the articles and things, but until you really get a chance to speak with somebody and hear their words and how they sort of present themselves, you really don't get a full appreciation, because there's always going to be something lost in the translation, if you will, in the articles. But the thing that Byron, that I found about your father, speaking with him, and I had him for 2 hours, and I'll tell you, that was, I mean, you'll know by as the time goes on, you'll know that I can talk a lot, but he just enjoyed himself. We had, of course, a number of people that called in and just were thrilled to speak with him. And in fact, we had one gentleman that I don't know if I told you or not, but was driving along I-10, of course, Interstate 10 here in the south, and he was bringing back his son and his wife. They were at some sort of a football game, and he knew that your dad was going to be on the show, and he just wanted to call in and just say hello and just appreciated the opportunity that I presented to have him there. And I mean, it was just like you could hear the elevation in your father's voice of just how he enjoyed just having people call in and talk with him. And just
he was a people person.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said that better. And it just was very honoring to have him on the show. And I sadly I wish I could have had another opportunity, but I will certainly cherish that time that I've had. Let me just ask you a quick question before we move on, because I know I'd sent you a message
Sure.
earlier, and I just want to double check. I see that we have somebody here, and I'm not sure. I know you said that your mom might call in. Do you know when she was planning on doing that? Because I don't know if this is a caller or if this is her before I answer.
You know what? My mom doesn't think she's going to manage. She's got a previous engagement. She just basically said, "Son, go ahead and talk about the tournament and send them to the website, and you'll do fine." So my mother doesn't mind delegating authority when need be.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's as so many mothers do. Let me just take this call. Somebody's patiently waiting here, and they may want to call in and say hello. So bear with me, Byron, and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Good
great.
evening, good evening, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. You're on here with Byron Casper. Welcome to the show.
Ted, this is Jamie.
Oh, not a problem. Byron, this is Jamie Leno Zimron. She was supposed to be on actually before you on the Coach's Corner panel, and Jamie, not a problem.
Hey, Jamie, how you doing today?
Real good. Nice to talk to you, Byron, and I think we're going to see each other in a few weeks.
Yes, I hope so.
Yes. Ted, first of all, and to all your listeners, I'm so sorry I just mixed up the time zones out here in California and got an hour late, so my sincere apologies. And meanwhile, I'm so thrilled to be able to hear Byron, and because when I was living in San Diego for a number of years, I was able to work with Billy's kids tournament and to work with Billy himself, and I'm looking forward to being back this year. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were going to be there. That's wonderful. You've been Yes, I will see you in about a week's time.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it.
Since we've mentioned it a few times, Byron, I think we should tell everybody when that is. It's May 4th. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's May 4th at San Diego Country Club. We've been having the tournament for about 19 years now. Both my mother and father started it really just to give back. They, both my parents came from probably less than ideal upbringings.
Sure.
And so, I really think that my dad never lost, or my mother for that sake, never lost the desire to always help all of those around them. It wasn't enough to help their kids and be good parents. They wanted to really help their community, And because of that, the tournament has been very successful over 19 years. They've raised, I believe, around $3 million for children's charities all over the country. And this year, obviously, with Dad gone, we're having a memorial tournament, and I believe it's really going to be special. And according to my mother, I believe we've got 5 or 6 spots left. So,
great.
Please go to billyskids.com and register before it's too late.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Byron, we'll as we go along here, we reiterate the date and time and the website and that so that people that maybe are tuning in a little bit later will be able to pick up on that. But Jamie, not to worry. I'll hear you about time zones. I've been caught myself, but we'll definitely. I think you're coming back on the panel here, I'm sure, in the next couple of months. So we'll definitely have you back on. And what do you remember before I let you go? Because I want to obviously focus here on Byron. You've obviously been to the tournament. Now, what do you remember most that impressed you about Billy Casper?
Well, I can share a couple of things. Number one is he was so gracious to me. We actually did a putting clinic together, and which was just fantastic. I have this stubby putter that the actual putter head is the size of a golf ball, and Billy just fell in love with it. We had so much fun on the putting green with it, and he would turn me loose on the golf course. I would ride around a cart and hit some shots with everybody, and which was fantastic. And coming into the banquet was always just incredible. I mean, the people there, the energy, the generosity. And Billy always had some kinds of like theater, dance, singing performances of young people that Billy's Kids sponsorship really enabled to be able to get that kind of education, to sponsor all kinds of theatrical, cultural, educational trainings, events, performances for the young people. And he would have them there, and it was just so moving. And I would, look over at him and at Shirley, and they were, of course, just beaming, and everybody was amazed and enthralled by these incredible young people. So you could actually see some of the fruits of what his organization and his sponsorship was allowing to happen for these young people. So I will never forget that. And just to be in his presence and to be with the hundreds and hundreds of people who he would bring together was so special.
Yeah, and I unfortunately didn't have the pleasure of meeting him face to face, but I did, as I alluded to earlier in the program, did certainly get to speak with him for not only the 2 hours that he came on the program, but an hour or so before when we were setting it up. And he was just, I can't say this enough, but just an incredibly humble man, and just I could literally talk to him for 5 hours a day if he would have let me, but it just he had so much insight into people, not just the game, but into people in general, and it's no wonder he enjoyed the success not only on the golf course but certainly off the golf course, and has certainly done so much to give back. And we're going to talk Byron and I a little bit more about that as we go along. But Jamie, thank you very much for calling in. Not a problem, honestly. It happens from time to time, but have a great evening, and I got to let you go. And Byron and I are going to continue on here. But I will see you.
Thank you for your thoughts as well, Jamie. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely, and thank your mother, and I'm really very honored and happy that I'll get to join you for the this great event this year too.
Oh yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. So I shall see you next weekend.
Real good. Thank you, and thank you, Ted. Okay.
Not a problem,
Bye-bye.
Jimmy. All right. Bye-bye.
You bet.
Okay. So
Byron, that's a nice coincidence, as often exists in the golf world, isn't it?
I know. Yeah, it happens. Pardon me. It happens. Yeah, and you know what? It's not a big deal. I feel very blessed and honored, really, to be able to have so many great people in this industry take part in this program. And give, and are giving of their time. It's not an easy thing. It's a Thursday evening. It's a popular time on TV. People, are home from a busy day of work and have their own families to attend to. So anytime that somebody can jump on here and help out and do something and give of their time, I'm very appreciative. So, sometimes a slip up happens, time gets mixed up or what have you, or other things come up last minute. So no worries. But Byron, one of the things that I want to ask you, let's talk very briefly again, and I don't want to overshadow your time with just strictly talking about your dad, but let's talk about his leg. Let's talk about his career.
Son, so it's okay.
Well, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about his career, and you caddied for him in the '80s. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did, actually. I got to caddy for him on the Senior PGA Tour, and that also included a couple Masters, caddying for him at the Masters twice. It was an interesting time. I wish I could say that it was a perfect time, but being a teenager and regardless of how famous your father is, I don't think you really have a great relationship with your father when you're a teenager. And so I remember a lot of enjoyment. I remember traveling the world, getting to see some incredible places, and really starting my love for golf started at the Billy Casper golf camps at UCSD in San Diego when I was young. But, the stepping stones or the building blocks of our personalities and who we are and what our careers are, I would say that caddying for my dad very much was step two in just getting a understanding of the game to a level as a teenager that most people, don't get throughout their entire life. And it always kind of what brought me back to the game. Golf isn't a scary game for me.
No,
traveling the tour or being in that life isn't really all that daunting. And there's been times in my life when I've really appreciated the upbringing that my mom and dad have been fortunate enough to give me.
Yeah, and that's so true. And that well said, by the way. The other thing too is what people don't really appreciate from your standpoint as his son. It's not easy being a teenager, as you said, being out on tour. Certainly, they don't have at that time. It wasn't as certainly it was televised, but now with the way the media, social media, and that, you're everybody. Everybody knows your business. It's certainly not easy to be on a stage like that, if you will, and that's really what it is, especially at the Masters. Everybody's sort of seeing, and I'm sure that they're focusing on your dad at that time, but you're there as well. And for somebody that's a teenager at that time, sometimes you don't maybe want to be there. You want to just kind of be doing your own thing, but you're doing that because you love the game and you want to support your dad, of course, and you want to be there for him. But you don't want to necessarily always be in the limelight. And so it's a very, very daunting thing, I would imagine. Would you agree with that?
To be honest with you, I would agree with that. And I would also say that it's one of those hidden gems. There's a lot of, I like to call them hidden gems in life because, how often in our lives do we look back 10 years ago and go, gosh, I'm really grateful I did that because that's helping me now. And, as I looked back on everything from the golf camps and the caddying for my father and then the San Diego Golf Academy and then living in Scotland and being in the golf business, it always made me aware of a couple things. It made me aware very much of who my father was and what it took to get to his level in any business, never mind the golf world. And two, it really made me separate kind of what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be in the golf world. And part of that is very much Billy Casper's son. And part of that is very much Byron Casper, golf professional. And, it's a learning curve. So, in retrospect, I have to say that I'm very grateful for all of the experiences over the last 25 years because I think that they've made me who I am now. And my father, quite frankly, his lessons will be reverberating in my brain for the next 50 years. So, so he's very close, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's so true. I think it's, he certainly has, planted some great seeds of knowledge, if you will, in all of his children, I'm sure, and Byron obviously having a love of golf. Now I know that there are others involved in different aspects. Are you one of the only ones in the Casper group that really has gravitated to golf, or are there others that in your family that are interested as well?
Well, I think you could say that all of the family members are interested in golf in one way or the other. There's 2 golf professionals in the family. My older brother Bobby, some of you will remember from him playing quite a few mini tour events as well as a few select events on the PGA Tour. He now has a radio show of his own and a partner and enjoys that, and I believe he still plays, a little bit. But other than Bobby and myself, everybody else has gone in different directions rather than golf.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and it's not, I would say certainly it's a golf family because you're all involved in some aspect, as you said. I mean, some of them were players, but others may be involved because of the charities and the tournaments and things like that. But
exactly.
may play as a recreational. But a lot of people might stop and think, well, geez, your father's is icon really in golf. You would think everybody would want to gravitate, but it's not necessarily always the case. I'm sure even though Jack Nicklaus or what have you, some of the other greats in the game, even though some of his children, we all know, played golf, Gary and Jack Jr., but I'm sure not all of his kids necessarily gravitated to a professional golf life. So it's just, everybody has their own personality.
You should say that. Yeah, well, everybody has their own personality, and my mom and dad really made it possible for their children to shine in whatever ways they wanted. We were all very lucky that way. And I have to say as well, because I'm sure that this is written down somewhere, because I've heard my father say it, it's certainly enough in his talks and so forth. But my dad did not make it easy to go into golf.
No.
It wasn't something that he necessarily promoted as a career choice. I suppose it's just like anything. When you're so close to it, you don't have any blinders on. So you understand exactly what it takes, not just to be a professional golfer, but everything that comes into that, the travel, the time away from your family, the dedication, the hard work, all of those things. And so I think that with my older brother Bobby, certainly, and with myself to a smaller extent, Dad wanted us to make sure that this was what we wanted to do more than anything else. And for me, it was teaching golf first and then playing golf. And for Bobby, it's always been playing golf and teaching a little bit on the side. And so, I hate to admit it, but Bobby's always been the better player. But we'll see what the next few years hold. So,
and we're going to talk about that as well. Let me ask you something too, Byron. When your dad was on the program, and you'll understand when I say this, it became very apparent that your father had a great love for the fellow man. Where do you think that came from? Why? I mean, we all certainly love others and that, but why do you think he was so passionate about loving his fellow man?
I think you go all the way back to his childhood and him not being able to take things for granted. Growing up very much kind of between friends' houses and on the streets in his later teen years, I think he looked at golf as the thing that saved him and my mother, golf and my mother, from, doing something else or perhaps going off the deep end. And so as he grew up and as he went through all of these experiences, the one thing about my dad was he was always serious on the golf course, and he always had a ton of time for people off the golf course. And, as he progressed through life and him and my mother joined the LDS Church, he slowly softened as a father. As a father myself, I can tell you that I'm certainly softer 15 years later than I was before I had children. And so I think all of these things added up to just my father having a genuine love of not just people, but a genuine love and passion about what he did and about perhaps what he could offer in advice. And, just giving somebody a pep talk perhaps when they needed it. He was never short on those. And I wouldn't say that my dad was always a man of many words, but I would say that the words that he spoke were usually so profound that you just found yourself kind of being drawn into listening to him.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt that as well. You know, he would share, of course, his book, The Big Three and Me, that we talked about on the show. And, you know, he talked about some of the stories. Of course, we couldn't cover the whole book, and we wanted people to get out and get a copy. But he touched on some of the stories now. And it was very evident. You could hear a lot of passion in his voice when he would talk about some of the different stories and say those things. And it was very evident as well that he certainly did have a lot of love and passion for his fellow man. Let's talk about you for a second. Scotland, you mentioned that in some of the earlier notes. You lived in Scotland for 13 years, a golf pro, and specifically you worked in St. Andrews. How cool was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting. When I left college, I got really fortunate, and Joe Collette, the manager of Seve Ballesteros, had just started the International Golf Tour and the International PGA, and was involved in a great group of people, and I got hired to work for them as the player liaison in the late 90s, and at the same time got married to a Scottish girl, and ended up moving to Scotland in 97, I believe, and had been over there in the 80s for 2 years and stayed in Scotland until 2007. And the last 8 years of it, I had been fortunate enough to be the golf professional and club fitter at Heritage Golf of St. Andrews, now called the St. Andrews Golf Company. So, you know, even for the son of a rather famous golfer, for me personally, as a teacher and as somebody that's always been interested in the game, that was a dream job for me. And I still look back at it with hugely fond memories.
What do you think you learned from that experience? I mean, obviously you learned the craft and you understood, but what specifically about the game did you take away from that experience?
Well, you know what? I'll share a story with you.
Sure.
And I've gotten to the age in my life where I don't mind showing how pathetic I was when I was younger. But the first lesson I learned when I played Carnoustie for the first time over there was that my game needed huge improvement. And the sad thing was that my dad at that time, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but he had the low round during an Open championship at Carnoustie. So they had a plaque up. And I went out thinking that I was a great young professional golfer and proceeded to shoot 82 at Carnoustie.
Wow.
And walked off the course just dejected. And that, for me, that was kind of the awakening of, you know, it's not just about how pretty your swing looks. It's not just about how good you can hit a ball in the range. You know, there's conditions out there in the world of golf that you need to be a player, and that sometimes that has nothing to do with how pretty your swing is. And so I was lucky for the next, decade. I really had the opportunity to learn a different type of golf, links golf. I had the opportunity to teach a ton of people, and I did a lot of club fitting, and it was a great experience. Something that quite frankly, I cherish to this day.
Do you think, Byron, that, being the son of obviously somebody very well known, especially in the golf industry and even outside of the golf industry, most people, if you mention Billy Casper's name, they certainly will know who they're talking about. Do you feel that there was a lot of pressure on you growing up, especially trying to get out there and do your own thing, whatever avenue you decided to go? Was there a lot of pressure, particularly since you went into the same industry as what your father was in? Was there a lot of pressure on you, do you think, to especially as you just alluded to, he shot an 82 at Carnoustie, which to some people are thinking, what's he talking about? 82 is not bad. But in your mind, you were seeing something different. You're looking at the plaque there of your father shooting the course record and you're thinking, okay, I'm Billy Casper's son. I got to get out there and I'm just going to, just eat this course up. And then, as you say, sort of walking off dejected, after your round. Was there a lot of pressure on you, do you think? Or did you put a lot on yourself?
Well, it's interesting. You kind of answered the question for me. But, yeah, the only pressure that I ever felt was from one of two areas. It was either from myself or it was from some, I suppose, possible pressure that I felt when people would announce me in big groups at, in golf clinics and so forth. But again, I would have to revert back to that was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. I think everybody that, it doesn't matter if your dad's the most famous plumber in town or, a famous golfer, there's always a certain, level that we want to live up to, as sons with our dads. And for me, it was fortunate that, I got to live up to that in the areas that I needed to, writing books, being published, being a teacher that's taught, over 5,000 lessons and, being the teacher, quite frankly, that my dad sent his friends to. What a compliment. If you take away the dad aspect, being the teacher that the number 7 golfer in the world sent his friends to. So, things like that went a long way to help me believe in the person I was. And I also think there's a certain amount of reality to that. I recognized early on in my career that it was pretty much infeasible unless you're Tiger Woods or perhaps Phil Mickelson. You're not going to win 51 tournaments nowadays. And so that took that off the table. And, my father never once, not once in his life or my life, ever made me feel pressured in any way, except for when him and I were on the course alone. And he would start calling shots from the cart. And I can tell you, that's a lot of pressure when your dad's like, hey, hit a high fade into that green. And, I want you to approach that one, number 3, go ahead and take it over the bunker and draw it in. And, things like that, that was really the only pressure, and that was always fun. So,
Byron, was there ever a time on the course when that happened and you turned around and looked at your dad and you may not have said this but thought this, so like, are you kidding me? Was there a few times that happened?
I remember a time at Hobble Creek, up not far from where my parents live in Utah, and as usual, we got out playing, him and I, and within 4 holes, 5 or 6 different groups stopped by to say hi.
Sure.
And while my dad was entertaining all of these people, he was throwing balls down and having me hit, 4 irons and 5 hybrids into the green. And every time I didn't hit it perfect, he would make a funny little comment and throw another ball down, and that was my dad's way of not only testing me but also making sure that my mettle was up, and I cherish that. I look back on that day a year and a half ago as one of my most favorite golf experiences because it was my dad's personality, his funness, if that's a word, and his realistic expectations that if you're going to be a golf pro, you're going to be a golf pro. So
it's a word tonight, Byron. Let me ask you, what do you think that your dad was giving you a taste of your first gallery?
You know what? I think that my dad probably liked to do little things like that all the time, whenever the opportunity posed themselves, and he also was a great challenger, and when he challenged you to do something, like hit a knockdown 7-iron to the green, if you hit it 20 feet too high, he would grab the 7-iron and he would show you exactly how to do it. And his level of talent, Ted, gosh, I could keep you on the phone for 2 hours about the talent that I have seen by watching him. But it certainly is God-given because, and obviously a lot of practice. But as good as I'm playing right now, I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what it's like to step over a golf ball and in my head know with a 99.9% probability that ball will go within 5 feet of where I want it to.
Yeah.
And I don't think the level that he had. That's just not normal.
No, and there's a lot of people out there I know that would agree with you, Byron. There's very few people on tour today Certainly some phenomenal ball strikers, but if you look at the stats and if you look at some of the players, they can hit some great shots. But when under pressure, we obviously watch, and as I'm sure you did, you watched the Masters there the other weekend. Jordan Spieth just played some phenomenal golf. Had a few missteps along the way, but he just was certainly in control of his 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And ultimately went to win. And let me ask you a quick question about him. I don't want to get into specifics about his game, but seeing how he handled himself and how he was able to close the deal, if you will, what do you think your dad's thoughts would be about Jordan? What do you think he would say about Jordan Spieth and how he handled himself at the Masters?
Well, it's interesting. My mother texted me on the Sunday when we were texting back and forth. She's in San Diego right now, and we were talking about what Jordan was doing, and she reminded me that my father had called it. My father had called it 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and said, this kid is amazing. Watch the way he handles himself, and watch his game, because he's the next big thing. And and I'd heard my father say that in the past. I would say that my father would have been extremely impressed. My father was a great advocate of what the game of golf really represents, and that the game of golf is not just a game, it's also handling yourself in the correct way and setting the correct example. And everything I read about Jordan, from his little sister with autism to his close family, to his phenomenal playing, quite frankly, I could not be more impressed with another golfer.
He is certainly here this last year. He had a great finish in 14, and he certainly made a great start here in 15. And the thing that I think that impressed me is just how calm he was out there. I mean, how many times probably 1,000 times we could watch a tournament and see somebody come into the lead like that. Very few people can hold the lead for 4 rounds. That's an incredible feat in itself. But nevertheless, there were a few missteps along the way. I don't have my notes in front of me, but on Saturday particularly I watched, which is traditionally moving day for a lot of players and get preparation for that final round. And there were certainly a few holes early on. He bogeyed a few, but right back at it, and it didn't seem to break his stride. And everybody's going to bogey. Everybody's going to bogey, or I don't think he double bogeyed at all the whole time. But certainly a lot of people might look at it and say, "Oh, he missed that putt," and maybe the next hole he might have a few missteps in that. And right away, people's minds are starting to form. Okay, is this when he's going to fall apart? He's been here for 2.5 rounds. He's into Saturday's round, but that didn't happen. He bounced right back, and he just kept his composure, and that says a lot for somebody that was 21 years old.
Well, yeah. He's not only just young, but I would say that he's got to have an incredible grounding influences in his life, and from what I've read about his family, that sounds like he has that. He also has the ability, and again, very much, in my opinion anyway, very much God-given. It takes. I've been there. I haven't been on that stage, but I've been on various stages and played for money and in tournaments, and I can tell you that it is nerve-wracking, and you can either let it conquer you, as we've seen so often in the golf world, or you can conquer it. And I think Jordan is one of those rare individuals that's going to be conquering a lot of golf courses in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and you alluded to something earlier there that, quite often, and your dad has certainly said it, and then many of the people on television and so forth have said this before, that so-and-so is going to be the next great player. But I honestly think in this particular case it's true. We've seen a lot of players that, have had some phenomenal rounds and phenomenal tournaments wins, and then suddenly, they fall off the map. But Jordan seems to be, there seems to be consistency to him. Whether he'll win as many tournaments as Phil and Tiger, who knows, or some of the other greats like your father. But I think he's got a lot of wins ahead of him, and I think he is going to be somebody that the record books are going to show for a long, long time. I think this young guy's got it together. He understands, the challenges out there, and he seems to have. Now, the true test Byron, to be honest, is going to see how he moves forward here. This is his first major. It's certainly a big major. It's going to be interesting to see where he moves forward from here.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see where he moves forward from here. We're really lucky. In the golf world, we've seen a couple different big jumps in raising the bar. I really, really hope that this is another raising the bar. I think the talent is it's getting just crazy good. Equipment obviously is great. Balls are getting longer. There's so many things going on in the golf world to make people be able to play better anyway. But these guys, they're good, and it's not just talk. They walk the walk as well. I'm impressed with a lot of the young players right now, and quite frankly, I got to say, I'm impressed with guys like Furyk. He's my age and he's still winning. Yeah. So quite frankly, I love hearing that, and that gives me not only hope for the next few years of my golf career, but it's also nice to see that golf is a sport that, quite frankly, whether you're 45 or whether you're 21, there's going to be days when you're just really, really on your game and are going to be better than everyone else.
What do you think? And I don't want to get in because, this is something you could expand on for several hours of conversation as well, but what do you think the state of the game is today, in your opinion?
Well, I'm fortunate because I'm involved in a group through my business manager, Steve Kinch, who it's called the Global Golf Initiative, and quite frankly, it's dealing with that. What's going on in the golf world? Statistically wise, we're losing golfers. Courses are closing down. I think that all the way through the business, we've got the opportunity to really make this game powerful for the public and for the amateurs and for the people that want to enjoy it. One of the things that personally confounds me as a teaching professional is that the handicap's not getting really any better over the last 30 years.
Right.
So for me, I've been a teacher that has had a lot of technical background because of my club fitting, because of my experience with Golf Tech, because of all of that. Because I've had all of that experience, it also brings to mind that I didn't want to lose out on the stuff that Dad gave to me, the feel aspect. And so I think you have to combine the two and use feel, use the technology that's available, and instead of reformatting everybody's swing and making them look pretty, what's wrong with just taking what they have and helping to shave a few strokes off their game? Because your average golfer is never going to play tour golf.
Right.
The biggest tournament they're going to play in is probably a member guest. And if that's the case, taking them from shooting a 90 to where they can comfortably shoot an 82, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
And in my opinion, not enough people are making those small changes, because those small changes are what lead up to the big changes.
Well, and that's a great point, because, and I've said this so often on the program as well, I think one of the things that concerns me the most, and I'm all for it. I think technology is great. I think it's interesting. I've been down to the PGA show, as I'm sure you have, over the years, and you've seen some of the technology in that. The thing that concerns me, we touched a little bit about this earlier in the program on the panel discussion, that sometimes I think that we as instructors and coaches and that a lot of times we get sometimes, or some anyways, get too involved in the technology or too caught up in it and too up in the latest and greatest technology. And I'm not just talking about the electronic technology, but even some of the new theories and so forth, that a lot of times we're imposing our will onto the players. And I think this is scaring a lot of people out of the game as well. I mean, somebody comes to you and
it's too
right?
convoluted and too difficult. I mean, you're going to you confuse people.
Yeah, and I think in our over excitement, if you will, of all the technology out there and all of the new theories, pardon me, excuse me, that I think a lot of times as instructors, I think we're getting too excited about it, and instead of absorbing what we're learning for our own use, we're trying to impose that onto the players, and I think it's scaring a lot of people away from the game.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that there's always going to be people out there that want the latest and greatest and want the latest technology, and quite frankly can understand it because we live in a technological world. So that's one aspect of it. But I often wonder, and perhaps you can answer this. I often wonder if you're your average 60-year-old golf professional who you're working with and teaching. If you were doing nothing but working on technical specs and putting them on the simulator and reading all of these numbers, and that their ball spin is 7,000 and their side spin is 1,800 and all of these things, what does that do to the mind when you're actually out on the golf course, when it's just you, your clubs, your glove, and your ball? It doesn't prepare you for the course. And so, my father was a huge advocate in a couple things. The first was spend time on the range, but don't overdo it. Get out on the course and hit shots, even if it means going out at the end of the day and throwing 3 or 4 balls down in the fairway as you're coming up. I'm sure the club owners and people won't favor me for saying that, but I certainly don't want to hold up play. But at the same time, hitting shots from different areas on the golf course is what, one, is going to turn you into a player, and two, it's going to give you confidence on the golf course, which is where you need it.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm all for. I think the technology is interesting, and I think there is a place with it. But as I've said a few times on the show, and I said one of the guests was on here a couple of years ago, I said the way that, especially the electronics, I said what you have to consider as a professional is it's great and it can help sometimes answer questions that maybe you may not necessarily see with the untrained eye. But I said at the end of the day, what happens when the power goes out or the batteries die in that technology? Then what do you rely on? If you're solely relying on that technology to work your craft, what happens when that power goes out, or what happens when those batteries die? Then what do you rely on? So you have to be a good instructor first, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you understand what I'm getting at?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. It's interesting because we talked a moment ago about, Dad and, his career and so forth, and now we're talking about, modern things. And I had the opportunity to do a club fitting and so forth with my dad and put him through all the specs and so forth. And, he was a little bit wowed and so forth, and he looked at me and he said, I think he said this in front of a few friends as well, and somebody asked, how many tournaments would you have won if you'd had all of this stuff? And he looked at us and he goes, probably 2. Yeah. And, it was kind of a funny little joke, but the reality is that, yes, technology is absolutely important. We can understand ball speed, we can understand club head speed, we can understand spin, all of these things that are important to help, people go from point A to point B. But I find the really interesting thing is when you look at guys like Nick, my father, Casper, or Player, or Sam Snead, or Byron Nelson, any of these guys, they did all of this without video, without technology. And it kind of, and you may laugh at this, but it kind of refers me back to my early days teaching. And when I didn't have video, I would do what my dad always told me, and that is the 2-pocket rule. If I'm standing in back of you and you're hitting balls, I want to see 2 pockets by the time you hit the ball. And little things like that my father instilled in me that will always transcend the technology, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that, and you're right. It is kind of humorous, and I know that we've heard everything from the 2 pockets to the 2 cheeks to all kinds of things that they looked at back then. But there was a lot of wisdom there, and if you look at the history of golf and you look at some of the best players that accumulate, Trevino and he didn't have the prettiest swing. Chichi Rodriguez, I mean, they didn't have the best looking swing on tour, but man, could they put that ball in the hole, and they won some tournaments. And your father's the same way. Let me ask you, because it's hard to believe at this time is just zipping by here. Byron, what's in it for you in the coming years? Is there going to be a run for the Champions Tour?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, that's when my father was coaching me. I've been a single father for about 8 years. Now I'm a single father with a beautiful daughter and a beautiful granddaughter. So there's been a reason why teaching and writing books has been not only convenient for me, so I could be home at night for dinner, so to speak, but
sure.
It's also been a learning experience for me. I've learned, in my opinion, I've learned from one of the best, if not the best, and I've learned from my own hero. And I had his endorsement that, in his words, keep working on your short game, and you're there. So, I truly believe that in the next 3 years, when I become of age, and that's one of the funny things about golf. Who would have thought that I at 47 was looking forward to being 50?
Yeah. Well, I'm
with the senior tour coming up, I have to say that I'm not really looking backwards. I'm certainly looking forward. So.
Well, Byron, I'm a few years ahead of you. I turned 51 this year, so we'll see what happens in my future. But maybe I'll see you out there for a few rounds. I would love it. But and maybe some competition. Yeah, that would be. I would enjoy that for sure. And who knows what'll happen? And it's great to see that tour's doing as well as it is, and some great names out there. Freddie Couples, has done well, and so many great players that I've watched growing up. Have certainly paved the way, and I think in a lot of ways, it's just probably some of the best golf you're ever going to see from some of the best players. And that's not
exactly. They're not going anywhere.
No, exactly, and there's just a fresh crop. In fact, it's interesting. Pardon me. You hear a lot of the players that are sort of inching up to that age bracket on the regular tour, and they're all looking for. A lot of them you would think years ago they might have shied away from that, the senior tour. Are you kidding me? And now they're all like, I can't wait to turn 50 to get out and then play with some of my friends that I haven't seen for a few years, and they just like the atmosphere and the style that's out there. So I think you're going to do fantastic out there. Like you said, you've come for some good breeding, and your father, I'm sure, has taught you well. We would be certainly remiss, Byron, if we didn't talk a little bit more about the tournament. Again, that's coming up May 4th next week. Hard to believe it's here again. Let's talk a little bit about the charity and the foundation, Billy Kids Youth Foundation. Talk a little bit about that, and just remind everybody again, about the charity about the tournament next week.
Yeah, well, the golf tournament is it's the Billy Casper Golf Classic, and it's going to be a memorial this year. It really is a special event. Dad and Mom just made it. I guess the best way to explain it is they made it very personal, and are very involved with running it. My sister Judy is running the tournament with my mother in San Diego right now, and it really is a special tournament with a great format, a lot of great prizes, some amazing tee prizes, things you can win, and it's for a great cause. Billy's Kids, again, billyskids.com is the Billy Casper Youth Foundation, and it is what it says. It's for the youth. It is for helping children's charities around the world, but primarily here in the U.S., with programs that they otherwise couldn't afford. And it's just a small way that two people, my mother and father, and there are hundreds of volunteers and family members and good people that come and play in the tournament and participate, that everybody bashes in and gets involved and really helps. And obviously, because of it being a tournament that's been run by my mom and dad, there's some really unique things that they auction off, and other prizes that are certainly worth people's time. And again, because it's all for charity, you can't get away from enjoying a great day on the golf course with all the proceeds going to kids. So,
yeah, and that was definitely something that your father, when he was a guest on the show here a couple of years ago, really emphasized the importance of giving back, through charities, and that's why obviously he developed the Billy's Kids Youth Foundation, and along with your mother, and kudos to both of them for doing such a fantastic job of giving back, and this is really, what I talk about. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, in this day and age that do a lot of great work, but I've really found very few people with the passion and that was very evident that came across speaking with your father, how important this was, that he wanted something that he wanted to do, and this was a legacy that he wanted to really leave, not only for his children but for other kids out there as well, that as they grew up, wanted to give them an opportunity at life, and it wasn't just about golf. It was really about learning some valuable life lessons along the way. So, having said that, May 4th is the date that everybody needs to keep on their calendar. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great people out there. Some notables, I'm sure. Is Johnny Miller going to be attending? Do you know offhand?
I'm not sure if Johnny's going to be attending or not. I don't believe so. But it was. I believe that Johnny is going to be involved in the tournament later in the year here in Utah.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about the one in San Diego. Again, there's going to be some great people there, some other golf professionals. And again, it's for a great cause, and it's also really about understanding that you can give back, and at the same time you can have a wonderful time and bond with new people. And that's what golf is. And I'll leave you with this one thing that my father used to always say, and I have to say I wholeheartedly agree, and this ties into the charity, and that is, when you play golf with somebody, you spend 4 hours, perhaps 5 hours with that person or with that group of people. What other sport or what other group in business or otherwise do you have an opportunity to see every personality type and every emotion come out?
Right. That's
over
true.
the course of 4 hours. And so I have to believe, much like my father did, that playing golf with somebody is probably one of the best ways of getting to know your fellow man. And
that's true.
And when you do it for a charitable cause and you're with a new group, it's a great day out. So please come and join us. Feel free to, I'm sure you can post the number online, Ted, and the website. So they can go to the website or they can call the number and get an application sent to them via email.
Sure. What's the off the top of your head? Do you know the number offhand?
It's 801-427-5801 is the number they can call for more information. BillysKids.com is the charity.
Right.
And the email would be bcgolfpro@live.com.
Pro@live. Yeah, I think I've got that all there. Well, Byron, obviously you've got a lot of exciting years ahead, and really you've been on a phenomenal journey, with your dad and in this great business. And you're right, just to encapsulate what you were just talking about here. You see all kinds of personalities on the golf course, and really in 4 to 5 hours, you can learn a lot about somebody, about their character. You see both good and bad sometimes, hopefully more good, but sometimes you see bad come out in there. I'm sure we've all seen it. And as a club fitter, I'm sure you've had to mend many broken clubs over the years, over in St. Andrews and here in the United States. But we're glad to have you come back here and share some thoughts and insight. And Byron, you have an open invitation to come back anytime. I would love to have you back on. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we're winding down. But I just want to say this for those listening to the program, whether you're in the business or whether you're just a fan of Billy Casper's, certainly go to BillysKids.com and do what you can to help support really, I think, one of the best charities out there. If you're not able to attend the tournament, and if you are, that's even better. But if you're not, go there and find ways that you can give back to Billy's Kids, because he certainly has given us a lot here in the golf business. And Byron, thank you very much for sharing this time with us. I feel very honored and very blessed. 2 times in my life. Once, first time, as I mentioned earlier, many times, having your father on the show, and now having yourself on the show. And I hope that you'll come back and share some more.
I would love to, and I appreciate your time and being on your show as well, Ted. And just wish you the absolute best in the future. And I have to say that we're very blessed. The golf world is a wonderful world to be involved in. And I'm very grateful for not only being able to be a professional golfer, but also for having my dad around as my partner, my friend, my coach. And quite frankly, I'm sure there's millions of people that would disagree, but I do believe that I have the best mom and dad around. So.
Oh yeah, I would agree. It's a tie because I have to say mine as well. But
yeah, exactly.
I hear you, and again, it was an honor to have you on, Byron. Thank you very much. I know you've got a lot on your plate. And I know that Casper Golf is in good hands, and I know that there's many great things. And maybe we'll have you back on again. We'll talk about some of the things that are going to be happening down the road a little bit more. But Byron, have a great evening. All the best to your family, and tell your mother thank you very much for raising such a terrific son. And good luck with the tournament.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck with the tournament next week, and please, as I said, you're welcome to come back anytime. And I think I'm going to try and make a point of coming out to the tournament next year. So thank you,
that'd be wonderful,
Byron. Yeah, I would love to do that, and maybe we'll do a broadcast from there. But thank you, Byron. Have a great evening, and much continued success, and save me a spot on the Champions Tour.
You know what? Absolutely. I appreciate it. Ted, you have a wonderful evening, and thanks again.
All right. All the best, Byron. Thank you.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was my very special guest. I know we've actually gone off air. I want to thank all of my guests tonight, Clint Wright, Matthew Cook, and thank you, Jamie, for calling into the program. I know we got a little mix-up with the time there, and no big worries. We'll have you back on anytime. You're welcome as well, and sorry that you missed out in the panel discussion tonight. I want to thank my very special guest, Mr. Byron Casper, for joining me and talking about his dad, Billy Casper, who unfortunately golf lost on February 7th of 2015. But I want to thank the listeners, take this opportunity to thank all of my listeners worldwide for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each week. I certainly, as I did tonight, have a great amount of pleasure and enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teacher professionals, authors, and entrepreneurs, and great gentlemen like Byron Casper stop by. And it's through their participation and guest appearances that have helped make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. Thank you to all the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide. Thank you always for your support. If you're interested in getting a copy of Jonathan's guide, go to southcoastgolfguide.com, and you can get a copy through there. Also, Meredith Kirk from Meredith Kirk Golf, thank you very much for your continued support. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland for all of your support as well on the show. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf. Go to onticgolf.com. You'll see a great line of custom designed putters. Mr. Sean Kelly, owner of linkedgolfers.com, a great gentleman as well. Thank you for all of your continued support, and keep up the good work with Linked Golfers. Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions, thank you very much for your support as well. I will see all of you right here next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central, right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great week.